The world turns, and with each turn, a change. And each change makes it more complex, unpredictable, enigmatic. The world keeps turning. And from the Pellicer and Heredia practice, we anticipate everything that is going to happen. Brexit, artificial intelligence, new commercial borders, legal tech. The world keeps turning, and it commands the reliance on international lawyers who are capable of interpreting this new reality with integrity, honesty, and transparency, offering answers to so many new questions. Whatever it is, ask us. At Pellicer and Heredia, we know how.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you are across the Atlantic. My name is Ignacio. I would like to first thank you for joining us today and wish you a happy new year, 2023. We're starting with the webinars and you on the law in Spain. And we are really amazed about the amount of people who registered today to this webinar about the Nomad visa. I'm going to introduce you to start with to an expert. Actually, he's the Vice President of International Law, the Law Society in Alicante. His name is Pedro Heredia from Alicante. Hello, Pedro.
Hello, Ignacio. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in order to speak about this new rules, new visa that we have for Nomad visa.
Thank you, Pedro. And on the south of Spain, we have the excellent lawyer, Michael Davies. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Ignacio. Hello, Pedro. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Ignacio. Hola, Michael.
Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us today and sharing 1 hour of our time about this topic, which is a Nomad visa. Very, very important and very interesting for a lot of them. A lot of them probably, we're feeling now, Michael and Pedro, the weather is a bit cold here in Alicante. I bet in Almeria is a bit chilly as well. And but I know it's only going to last 1 week. So a lot of people are trying to move to the coast, to Spain, and they're willing to learn, Pedro, a lot about what is this Nomad visa. We've been predicting this happening. Thank God it did happen. It's promoting business with low taxes, with new visas, and enjoying the climate, the weather, and the quality of life in Spain. So I would like to say we've got the team here within this hour of our time. Please send us your questions. I know we're going to run out of time. We're going to publish tomorrow in our website in what we do, Nomad visa, questions and answers, so you could know exactly our thoughts, because there is no doctrine, no still obviously core doctrine neither, and but we will interpret the law how we see it, and further to speaking to the head office in Madrid about this Nomad visa. I'm going to pass over to Pedro, who's an expert. He's been predicting this happening. He's been studying the law long enough, and then we're going to share it, questions and answer with all of you as much as we can. Okay, so Pedro, over to you. What is the Nomad visa for Spanish residents? Over to you.
Thank you, Ignacio. Obviously, in the last, well, I would say in the last year, but obviously in the latest months or weeks, we've been asked many times regarding this visa, these rules that opens the door to those who wants to work in Spain and obtain a visa, and at the end authorization for residency in Spain, being authorized to work for a company outside, in this case, or companies outside, in case it's a professional. So the Nomad visa really it has different aspects really on also on taxes on entrepreneur, on creating companies, creating new companies of innovation, digital. But let's focus on this change of law that has happened in we call it a law of entrepreneur. Many of you have probably read about this golden visa that was one of the investment visa. That specific law, which is an investment also for entrepreneurs, also for high professional qualifications, for investigation, for example, for universities, And for those employees that are being, let's say, changed from one country to another, in this case, it is introduced this, let's say, remotely worker to be able to, to have authorization to live in Spain. So it is introduced this new concept of remote worker or teleworker or teleworking employee or teleworking professional. So as well as they invest, someone who applies for golden visa, for example, an investment of 500,000 euros of property could get this visa, as well as an entrepreneur with some details, some requirements, and also whoever is working in a company outside that wants to move into Spain and work remotely here. That's the concept of Nomad visa, someone who at the end, and it goes through this specific law, which is a very flexible law, I would say, rapid and very, very straightforward. Very, very straightforward. Obviously, if you fulfill all the requirements, as we will be speaking about them, and we'll be answering some questions. I just have read some questions that we have on the chat, and we will read them all if it's possible, and in order to answer those people who are listening to us. Well, secondly, thank you for all of you that are right now listening to this video, and we will try to answer your questions properly. Okay, well, this is the digital a nomad visa, or someone who is able to say what I said, and I will be reading literally what says the law. It says qualified professionals who can prove that they have some graduation, some graduates or postgraduates from universities. The law says literally reputable universities or a training course, business school with a prestigious, it says the word prestigious, recognize at least, you have that degree, you have that kind of training, or at least you have 3 years experience, professional experience. So we can divide in the law and change this kind of, or introduce this kind of concept. It says, well, you could be an employee of a company. So in case you have employment activity, okay, but the company that you work must be outside Spain, okay? That's one of the requirements. Or you say, well, I'm not an employee of any company. I'm a professional. I'm a counselor. I work for different companies. Why have I work for 2 or 3 companies at the same time? Not as an employee, as a professional. Well, that's also an issue that could be required, but it has a limit that you could work at least maximum 20% of your activity could be in Spain, for companies in Spain, in the territory of Spain, but just 20%. So you could move to Spain, you could come to Spain and say, well, I'm working my turnover, my activity in Spain for companies is no more than 20%. Then you fulfill the requirements, because the rest, more than 80% or 80%, you get those activities, those work remotely for companies outside Spain. Okay, so employment, and then professionals. And those who are qualified, as I said, university, business, or at least has 3 years professional experience. I assume that, and we still are right now at the beginning of this law, which, and let me just give some, we still are waiting for some criteria, some, like, let's say, little words that there's a deadline until the 31st of March of this year, that we need to receive some more information, more rules, developing these rules that we have, in order to have more accuracy on some concepts, in order to give us which is the path of the route, in order to go, all the applications, the proceedings, all this. We will be informed before the 31st of March of some questions that I still personally have, and I have some doubts in some questions. So whether you're an employee of a company or you're a professional outside of Spain and you want to come to Spain with this kind of visa, you can do it, but you have at least to prove that you are with the degrees that I said, university or business school, or you have at least 3 years professional experience. What do I have to? What are the requirements? What do I have to show if I am employee of a company? Well, the company must have activity at least 1 year, at least. So how do I prove that a company has more than 1 year? Well, there are different kind of proof. Obviously, what we are saying right now, okay, well, the activity of the company, how do you prove it? The activity or the validity or that exists. The company that is working its activity, well, the company's house, the mercantile registry, the company registry should say with a document saying that this company exists, that company is perfectly well organized on the company's registry, so well exists, and you show the validity of that. So that should be enough to show that you have the company has more than 1 year existence. And you as an employee need to show that at least you've been at least 3 months working on the company, working with the company at least 3 months. How do you prove that? Well, you have a employment contract, you have a payrolls. I mean, at the end, you have some documents that proves that you've been at least more than 3 months working for the company. Okay, let's go on. And well, also the kind of contract that you do as an employee, you need to, well, at the end, to justify that it is a kind of work that you can work remotely. We have different examples, but obviously it needs to be done work that has to do with telecommunications, with electronic systems, with the computer. At the end, work remotely. It needs to be done this way, because on a different way, will not work. Will not focus on this nomad visa. So not just you have to prove or show that the kind of work that you do, you will be able to do it with a computer, for example, but also you will have to be allowed by the company. The company needs to authorize you that you are going to be transferred, or you're going to move, you're going to apply for the nomad visa into Spain. You have to have the authorization. So it's another document that you need to prove, well, existence and validity of the company that you work, the 3 months experience of that company, and also the kind of work that you do that you can justify that can be done remotely, and the company has to authorize you in order to, at the end, to come to work with Spain. Okay. Like working for as a professional is I would say is more or less the same. I mean, it's just at least 3 months for business relationship with companies, and at the end, terms and conditions under your activity as a professional is going to be carried out. And the end, you need to convince. At the end, you need to show that okay, my professional activity is this. I will be working in Spain that way, and I can do it, and I can work in Spain. You need to convince at the end to the immigration office that the kind of job that you are going to do in Spain, it fits to this visa to work remotely. Okay, let's go on. Ignacio, how can I apply for a digital nomad visa? Well, if you want to live in Spain, if you want to reside in Spain, obviously you can apply for that in the country where the Spanish consulate it is. And that's the visa that will give you or allows you to stay in Spain for 1 year. And also, after that, there is an authorization of residency that could bring you up to 3 years residency in Spain. And all of that could be also renewed 2 more years. And then would be a permanent residency in Spain will be 5 years time.
Pedro, in this case, the beauty of it is that people could come as a tourist to Spain, and then we can register digital nomad visa in Spain.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
they don't need to do it, because in the consulate is much more hassle, much more difficult, more
it's
taxes.
one of the I was going to go up after later down on that. This is something that obviously it is you can do it that way, or at the end as the golden visa. It works at the investment visa. This new this law applies for. You can do it while you are physically here. Obviously, just to apply directly authorization of residency directly, and that will give you at this stage more than 1 year really. Or maybe imagine that you have a contract with authorization by the company to stay here like 2 years. Well, at the end will be for 2 years and not for 3 years. It's going to depend also, maximum 3 years. It's going to depend also on the timing that you are allowed or you just want to at the end.
But Pedro, I think it's important people don't get confused. They should have everything in place from home, and then when they travel to Spain, have it all ready to submission. So I think that will be a good benefit instead of the non-lucrative visa that you need to do from the consulate of your home country, Spanish consulate in the home country. Here, the good thing is you could just come and then we will deal with the Foreign Office. So I consider it's better. It's better.
So this is, I mean, the requirements to of this is exactly the same as the golden visa. At the end, you have to have access to the health system in Spain, private or public. You have to show financial means. In this case, it's changed regarding with all the kind of visas. In this case, it's reduced. For one principal is around 25,200 euros per person. Also, you could bring your family members. Also, you have to show at least, I think it's 9,500 euros each family member, which is 75% of the minimum salary in Spain. And for the principal is 200, which is double of the minimum salary in Spain, which at this time is 1,050 euros. So let's think about principal around 25,000, a little bit more than that. And each family member around 9,500 euros. This is the minimum. Obviously, as much as you show, better. Okay, and that is the financial that you need to show, that you have enough money to live in Spain. That's important. Obviously, apart from that, we have to be sure that you do not have any criminal records. The law, in this case, is being changed. You have to show at least 2 years residency on the last country that you have lived. But you have to make a declaration of the last 5 years. Even though if we enter in the website of the public administration, public immigration office, it says a certification that shows the last 5 years. But the law says 2 years, and also making a declaration that in the last 5 years, you do not have any criminal records. Okay. What else? Let's go on, Ignacio. So what I say.
Shall we start with the questions, Pedro?
Well, no, well, let me just finish with because Nomad visa is extremely connected also with the taxes. So let's put in a scenario that someone comes to Spain. Okay, well, I says, well, it's gonna depend on what kind of income, and this is something that will have to be advised by a tax advisor, but obviously could take a good benefit on taxes in order to be taxed as if it were non-resident. Obviously, it's a faculty, it's not an obligation. It's a faculty that may get into a situation where say, well, I will not be paying if my income, my turnover is a lot, I will be able to have a limit of 24%. And because if I do it in a normal scale or standard scale as the Spanish tax rules, I will be paying more. So well, this is a benefit that has to be done perfectly, has to be informed the tax office. You shouldn't be living in Spain in the last 5 years. It was previously on that was 10 years, now it's 5. And also do not, whoever comes to Spain is treated as non-resident in case have assets in Spain over the minimum amount for the wealth tax, will have to be paid taxes in Spain accordingly to the assets that has in Spain. Okay, but that's wealth tax. Okay, but I don't think we'll be speaking about that today, but it's something that at the end, every Nomad visa that is going to come here, and the requirements are, I would say, not complex, also has to check the tax situation. I just wanted to say that, Ignacio, and let's go on for the questions that probably will be answering a lot better those who are listening to us right now.
Okay, Pedro, shall we start with some questions? Would you like to lead?
Well, let me just.
Can a self-employed person be considered an international remote worker? Absence outside Spain, family
Well,
members.
absence out of Spain can be as every year is no more than 6 months. That's the rule. And even though there is it's not a contradiction, but it says that disposición adicional sexta, which is one of the rules of this law, it says la continuidad de la residencia en España in order to acquire the residency of permanent home, the renewal can be done without in case there are some absence more than 6 months. But in this case, and it's in a public office, and we understand it that way, it shouldn't be more than 6 months per year.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so minimum 6 months will be the requirement here. And another question we have a lot, Pedro, self-employed person can be considered an international remote worker?
Yeah, I mean, as a professional, yeah, that's right.
But Pedro, they cannot have a company, because we have the similar case. They cannot be the only shareholder and work for themselves. So my understanding from the law is an independent company. I'm self-employed. I'm invoicing the company on a regular basis, obviously complying with the requirements of the 3 months, the company being active, more of the limit you said. But I do not think, Pedro, your own company could be, you could be in this case, like I have my own company and I work for my own company being self-employed. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, that at this time, I agree with you, that criteria. And let's see if those criteria
may change. Yeah.
May change or may be clear or transparent in the following weeks. I don't think that will entry on that situation will be answered whenever someone is going to apply. So at the beginning will be some rejections probably on that. It happened the same also with different visas like this one. And but obviously on the Spanish rules, someone who has a company, a limited company, and it's owned 100% by the same person, it is like an umbrella. At the end, it's treated really on taxes. But in this case, as a visa, I will recommend you do it obviously individually, because we understand the rule says that, but it may change in the future. Yeah.
And Pedro, what about they're asking as well about tax benefits? Do you want to go through it a bit? How much is the benefit on that, on the percentage?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, imagine that someone has like an income of 150,000 euros. And well, we have clients, Ignacio, that has a big income and is resident in Spain, and the taxes as we know are quite high in any scale, and could go to, well, more than 40% in average of all total amount. So at the end, we're talking about a big amount of income, but a big amount of taxes. Obviously, when someone is introduced through this Nomad visa, which let me start again. This Nomad visa is entered in a situation where non-European Union citizens can apply. Golden visa, sorry, investment visa, entrepreneurs, investigation, and this teleworking visa. It also is changed by this new law, the Starts Up, which changed the Entrepreneur Act. This law also changed the tax, the non-resident tax. But this non-resident tax is really not just for non-European countries, also for European countries. So those countries, we are not Spain. Okay. So this treatment really, it also, and this is something that we still have some, I would say, some doubts, because at the end, this was approved in order for non-European resident, non-European citizens, but the tax rule, it does not make any difference on that. What are the benefits? The benefit is at the end, you have a non-resident tax of 24%. But what if you are a European Union resident? Well, that's what is at this time, it's not clear from our point of view, but obviously it has a benefit. If you have good income, I would say, if your income is not too high, if your income is not, well, at the end, we have a threshold or a exemption that lower than 15,000 euros in Spain, you shouldn't be, you don't have an obligation to declare, you shouldn't be paying taxes. But obviously, so there is you need to test. You need to inquiry. You need to check what will be your taxes in case that you go to the normal scale in Spain, normal tax in Spain as if you were a resident in a normal situation as tax resident, or maybe you want to get this specific benefit as a non-resident, which, as I said, for example, wealth tax. What if I have assets around the world which are quite considerable, but I want to move to Spain as a remote worker or a professional? Well, that may fit perfectly in order to say, well, I will not be paying taxes on wealth tax. I will be paying taxes as a non-resident, this 24%, even though I pay more taxes than if I were a regular scale. But obviously, this is a benefit for those who have good income.
Pedro, I wonder whether the tax will go. I think it was meant as well for Spaniards who were abroad, were non-resident, but they would like to come back, the startups law. But I'm not sure if this will apply for Spanish from a tax point of view. Obviously, the visa doesn't apply. But for the tax, I think they might benefit of the 24%. But we can look into it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Shall we move on? I don't know if Michael has a question. Yeah, over to you, Michael. Michael, just the microphone, just turn it on, please.
Yeah. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm Michael Davies. I'm a Spanish lawyer. I'm down in Andalusia. Our firm is Davies, Abogados, Solicitors and Barristers. Okay, so it's a greater presentation about the Nomad visa. I was really interested in hearing, I've been reading about it this morning, that Ignacio, I've lost you.
Yes, I'm here, Michael.
Okay. Suddenly I felt I was talking to a black wall there. Okay, perfect. Okay,
over to you. Yeah.
So yeah, the thing that's very important is that there's two things about the Nomad visa. Some's a question and an affirmation, is to do with the wealth tax, and then to do with inheritance tax. And I'll stand a second. So regarding the wealth tax, it's great to hear that they've decided to, for the purpose of wealth tax in those regions where there is wealth tax, to consider people that have got the Nomad visa resident, to consider them non-residents. In other words, that for the purpose of wealth tax. So it means that
it's great.
Those people that have got, assets worth more than 700,000 euro outside Spain, that's not going to be brought in for the calculation of their wealth tax. And that is great. And I presume that is also going to be valid, because that's in respect to the to the regional wealth tax, which basically, if you have more than 700,000 euro in value, they're not going to count the assets outside Spain. But I expect it's also valid for this new national wealth tax they brought in recently for people that have more than 3 million euro in assets. I'm presuming that they're not going to consider the assets outside Spain to see where they have to, whether it's applicable to them, this new national wealth tax for people that have assets of more than 3 million euro. Do you think that's going to be the case? It's going to be the same as with the wealth tax?
I wouldn't, yes, Michael, because at the end of the day, that solidarity tax that they're talking is like a substitution of the wealth tax for the communities who doesn't have.
I think that's the reading. So we've already had a question from one of our clients in Estepona this morning, precisely about that. Is this, if I had the Nomad visa, would I not have to pay the special tax on over 3 million euros?
My understanding so far, Pedro and Michael, is that Nomad visa will be treated as a non-tax resident. And I should stick to it, Michael, unless they say the opposite.
Okay, and this leads me to the next question. So in that, I'd say that I'm 99% with you on that. And now that my other doubt is, as you know, my main field of activities is inheritance tax, and you can probably see where I'm going to come from here, is if you are a beneficiary resident of an estate, if you are a resident in Spain, you pay or have to declare, because maybe it's exempt, on what you receive worldwide, okay? Which in regions like Andalusia, it's no big deal, because if you receive from your parent or your spouse, you hardly pay anything. But other regions, you do have to pay inheritance tax. Are these, so in other words, at the moment, the rule is that if you, as a beneficiary, are a resident, you have to declare what you receive from worldwide, from the deceased, so it was in the UK or whatever. Well, if you are a non-resident, you only declare to the Spanish Inheritance Tax Office what is actually in Spain. Now, if they're saying that for wealth tax, they consider them non-resident for the purpose of inheritance tax, it doesn't mention anything all through the law. I've read it to see if I could find it, because that's what's going to affect my field of activity. And it doesn't say. So as I say, in Andalusia, if you're receiving from your spouse, it doesn't matter because the inheritance tax is so low. But what about these other regions where inheritance tax is quite high? There could be a big difference between just on the assets that you receive in Spain, or paying on from what you received from your rich grandmother over in New York that suddenly left you a whole load of assets, and you're considered a resident.
It's a good question, Michael, because obviously there is no doctrine, there is nothing written down on that. I think the only thing we will do, Pedro, is to interpret the law and stick to it. My understanding, if you're treated like a non-tax resident, from an immigration point of view, you're a resident. But from a tax resident, you're paying taxes as a non-resident. So I agree with you that you've given me the benefit.
Yeah, I'd give it 80%. So there's others on the wealth tax above, the 3 million euro. On the wealth tax, it's absolutely clear. The law's clear. On the other one, above 3 million, I think we're 99.9% there. But in the business of the inheritance tax, I've really got doubts about what they're going to do with it, because it doesn't say so. It doesn't say anything.
Yeah, Michael, as it doesn't say anything. I mean, a presumption should be, doesn't say anything about the inheritance tax. A presumption should be treated as a resident, as it doesn't say it's not, but has a contradiction because the wealth tax is very clear, or we said it's obligación real, so as a non-resident. So I assume that will be some conflict by someone. I'm saying that judge will have to decide. Okay, I don't know how to translate that. Por analogía, have to be treated as a non-resident. So but at this time, it doesn't say anything. Well, it's a presumption.
No, sorry. So wait a minute. So I'm not quite clear. So you think it's going to be, they're going to treat it as a non-resident or as a resident for inheritance tax?
It says nothing. So as it says nothing, it should be treated as resident.
And Ignacio thinks it's a non-resident. So we're all a bit, and I don't know.
I will ask Guillermo, see what he thinks from the law.
But as well
my
as
understanding,
Michael, as well as also as I said, I mean, I personally think it doesn't say that, but I personally think that as a wealth tax is going to be treated as non-resident, and as analogy on law, we have this kind of principles. Is treated as a non-resident should be treated as non-resident for tax purposes for inheritance. This is what I understand.
Non-resident. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
it doesn't say anything. It's a presumption that should be treated as a resident.
Yeah. Obviously, there is nothing written down, and they will have to clarify. But Michael, we could only stick to what this law says and play logic here. If everything is like a non-resident, I could try to stick with it. But I agree with you. They could come up with say, I'm sorry, you stay more than 6 months, you're more than 183 days.
You are a resident.
You're a resident, even though you are very well treated from an income tax return, but you are. We never mention anything about inheritance tax.
Because we could also understand that if what this law is doing is establishing certain exceptions, because they're exceptions to the general rule, we can't understand that something that's not been covered is within the exception. I think we're going to have to make a query to the tax office for them to tell us what they think about this, and they'll probably take a year to answer. So
at least.
Next year we may have the absolute answer. In most, as I said, it's what you, as you say, the planning is what's important. So at the end of the day, depending on where you purchased, it may not be a big issue anyway, because it may be that it's just that you could be in one of these, if you're in a sort of a specific situation, as I say, you're moving over to Spain from New York, and your mother's very old and she's just about to leave you a 5 million euro penthouse in New York. Well, then you need to think about this before moving over to Spain, if you're in that special circumstance. If you're going to move to one of the regions of Spain where inheritance tax is high, I think that's sort of where. So you need to ask.
Exactly, I fully agree with Michael.
That's the important thing of doing tax planning here. The only problem we're going to face here, Michael, is that, as you said, it might take a year for the taxman to clarify what about that issue that you just raised. Anyway, let's move on then. Michael, do you have more questions from the board, or shall we start with the ones we already have on the table here? Because we have hundreds, and
No,
Pedro,
all I can say is that this law is going to be incredible. It's, I mean, we're being, we've got lots of queries in the last 3 or 4 weeks, people asking us, is it really in place already? What's happening? It sounds like a very, a great initiative for all the coastal areas.
To be honest, Michael, even though the debate we're creating here about the applicable things and that, the benefits are much, much more of what the pre-existing law we had.
Absolutely.
So if you take it, if you really realize is you have a visa, which is great, you could work remotely, you could come back to your country, you could pay low tax as a non-tax resident. So it's even in a better position than ourselves, Michael, to be honest.
No. Oh, yes, I'd love to be able to take it on. It's fantastic. I mean, I'm thinking about many clients of ours that have been, messing around with going back and forth, working in London, living in Marbella, the family's there, and they've been sort of playing this game of never been here more than 6 months because they've got to remain non-resident and all these things. I mean, for them, this is going to be ideal. Absolutely perfect.
I mean, we'll have to look, Michael, as well, interesting point about the dual taxation treaty, because as you know, sometimes, okay, you're here, you've got a visa, you're more than 6 months, but probably in the home country, which is very normal, different countries have different rules. So saying more than 90 days in this country, you could be considered as a tax resident in that country. So it's important as well to plan. If you're in the United States, for example, I think it's 4 months from the top of my head. So if you're working 4 months there and 6 months there, you are a tax resident in the United States. And here you pay as a no tax resident, even though so we really need to look into it, nationalities and
I also, yes, nationality by nationality. I also think that, I mean, this is sort of one of these perfect scenario. If somebody is sort of a high net person and there's going to be, the taxation is a big issue, I would recommend a 3-way Zoom consultation. So they'd consult with someone like us or someone like you over Zoom with their lawyer from their home country on the call at the same time, or their accountant, because we can tell them what's going to happen in Spain and they can tell us what's going to happen over there. So we can try and coordinate.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's difficult to generalize an answer to a lot of people. I'm sure, Michael, you get a lot of video calls, video conference with a lot of questions. We have a lot of them, and I'm very grateful that normally you could give an answer and you could plan your life. So you could have different possible scenarios, and you can make a move, say, yes, I'm moving to Spain, or I'm postponing for 2024 or whatever. But Michael, the bottom line of it, I still think, even though there is not a lot of clearance on some points, I think is a great step forward, isn't it?
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said, because most of the double taxation treaties at the end, well, you are resident in a different country, you come to Spain to be resident. At the end, you have to declare your worldwide income in Spain as resident. You have to declare and pay taxes accordingly in Spain. But what if you are employee of a company outside? Well, at the end, you should, as a worker of a company outside, you should be paying gross and not being deducted. And obviously you need to have as a lawyer or a tax advisor in your country in order to organize that, to be treated, in order to be paying here in Spain and not in your home country. What will be paid in Spain will be your decision, instead of as non-resident if you get a benefit, or instead of a normal scale accordingly to the tax residency. But it's something that at the end gives the professional advice of international tax advisors from your home country as well as here, in order to conduct that specific situation.
Yeah, so let me give you an example of someone that it works perfectly for. We had a client that called us this morning, and he's got a large villa down in Marbella, and he at the moment lives in Dubai because taxation is just so complex for him in Spain, etc. So his family lives over in Marbella. He lives in Dubai. In Dubai, there is no tax, so for him it's perfect because he can come over here. Yes, he'll have to pay his 24% tax, but that's all he's going to pay, and it's the end of all the problems that he's having to go move back forth. When he tells me sometimes, he says, well, it's so crazy because I actually work mostly from home in Dubai anyway. So, and yet I can't live in Marbella with my family because I've got all this taxation problem, So for someone like him, it's ideal.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Let's move on with questions. We have hundreds and hundreds. Pedro, shall we start with?
Well, let me just
mention
the name. It says David. Thank you, David, for joining us. It says, will the Nomad visa allow digital workers from UK to stay longer than the 90 days? Yes. I mean, 90 days, this rule 90 to 180 days. Employed by UK company, paid in the UK, no earnings in Spain. That's okay. That's perfect. No problem. Mark, if I will be employed by US company when I move to Spain in next year, assuming that I fulfill all the requirements of a digital nomad, it is true. The question is, it is true that my Spanish-based income is limited to 20% of my total earned income. What it says is that if you are professional, at least no more than 20% of your activity, economic activity, should not be more than 20%. If you are an employee, it says employee by US company. I mean, at the end, the limit is 20%, but at the end, if you're an employee, at the end, you don't get any income from a Spanish company. If you are a professional that works for different companies, well, at least you can have turnover in Spain, at least 20%, but no more than that. Okay. Any requirements to, thank you, Mark, thank you, Peter. Any requirements to how long do you have to be an employee? Well, at the end, you have to show that you have experience on that company at least 3 years. The company needs to show that you have activity, the company, existing company, more than 1 year. Okay. Many firms are stating, I don't understand what it says, Ignacio.
Where are you, Pedro? I lost. There are so many that I lost you. Where are you?
Let me just check. Okay, I think it's non-resident tax. I mean, many firms, it's Alice there. It says many firms are stating that non-resident tax and RT will be reduced to 50% for the first 4 years, but this is not correct. I mean, this is not exactly correct. So let me read the question. My understanding is it is incorrect. That's right. The 15% rate is only available for the established. That's right. Let's focus on teleworker. It is what we say 24%, but there are some reductions on getting some income from dividend, from interest, from shares, that at the end the income could be reduced to 15% of these startup companies. But that is a different issue. We have no focus on that right now. And Alistair, you are correct. That specific percentage, 15%, is incorrect for teleworkers. So if you have read that in companies, at the beginning, it looked like it was like that. We also thought it was going to be like that some months ago, but it's not like that. Okay. Okay. Well, Ignacio, should I be reading or
I'm following? Have you managed about the Peterson? We have Canadian. This one here.
Okay, we have a Canadian and EU citizen. Can we apply for the visa? Well, if you have a EU citizenship, why apply for the Canadian or the Nomad visa? You as a EU citizen, you can move here to Spain and work in Spain.
That's right.
And get the benefit.
Pedro, they might be thinking about the tax, probably.
Yeah, but this is what I said at the beginning. This specific rule to obtain the visa, it just works the visa, the immigration authorization as an entry in Spain or being able to be authorized in Spain to be a resident. That specific visa goes to those ones who are not non-European Union citizens. Then the rule, this law has changed also the non-resident tax, and the non-resident tax applies to all who are not national in Spain, not residents in Spain, those who are not living in Spain, not residents in Spain. So if you are EU citizen but not living in Spain, not residents in Spain, you are not resident in Spain. So it follows that specific tax. You could be able to match this benefit or not. Okay.
Right.
So there is a difference on that, and probably there's a misunderstanding, which I understand. Okay, so can you assist with the taxes to be paid with these types of residency? Of course, yes, we will be able to help you, to deal with you. As Michael said, it is important to have a meeting, to have a sub-meeting, to understand specifically your requirements, your scenario, what you plan to do in the future. That's obviously we will be able to deal with that.
But Pedro, Peter has already I think he said European citizenship.
Yeah.
So I think he shouldn't be worried.
Yeah, exactly. About the tax. I mean, he has to apply for the queue of a European Union citizen. He doesn't have to use this Nomad visa. what I wanted to say is that he will be able to get the benefit of taxes if he wanted to.
That's a lot of them, Pedro. A lot of people who are European or even Spanish nationals who went abroad for 25 years, which is the case, and they're coming over back here. I think they should benefit of this law.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not. It's not clear to me. So are European EU citizens allowed to request this nomad visa even if they don't use it?
No nomad visa. Nomad visa, no. But
they can't claim it. Okay.
But the tax allowance
visa and the taxes is different. Are different laws. So the nomad visa is for non-European Union citizen to obtain this visa to enter in Spain, but also there are some benefits that the nomad visa who applies for that will be able to get it, but as well also the European Union citizens who are not residents in Spain.
They can claim it as well.
Sorry?
They can claim the tax benefit as well, the payment of 24%.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's changed the Article 93 of the non-resident tax.
Very good.
It is something that is a misunderstanding. Obviously, will be seen or about this. But it's
very fresh, isn't it? I mean, we are only 24 days with this new law.
And okay, let's say Robert says, how much income must you show to qualify? What we say is for one person is 25,200 euros, so a little bit, let's say a little bit more. Let's say 25,500, for example. I would say that is more or less the minimum. And each family member will be 9,500 euros. Can Social Security income from the United States qualify as income from the digital nomad? I have worked 3 years as a digital nomad, but only part-time since I have my Social Security income. Well, that's a good question, Robert. I mean, Ignacio, this says that if the Social Security income, obviously is a Social Security income that you may get, also you will be paying some taxes on the Social Security, which you are able to deduct it in Spain. But because in that case with the US has to be that way. I don't have an answer to that, Ignacio, because obviously if you get qualified or you want to get the non-resident tax as 24%, at the end you just pay 24% here and full stop. You will not be able to obviously to deduct anything that you may pay in the US in this case. On taxes, I mean, but I have some doubts on that right now.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so far, Michael, to the question of the inheritance tax, Guillermo is just saying here that, well, he doesn't say anything, but he thinks that he agrees that will be considered here, treated like a resident in that respect. So far, that's what he thinks so far.
Yeah, so we're 50-50. I'm totally on the wall with it, you know, but I think that I prefer to think of it from the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, I don't want to worry people about this because very often inheritance tax is very, very little anyway. But just it needs to be thrown into the equation just for those specific cases where it could be important. Basically, that's and
I think, Michael, you're fully right. We need to be prepared for the worst case senorio and then peace of mind. I agree. I mean, and I will expect tax office, if you make this question, you know the answer, yeah?
They're going to say resident until the courts tell us otherwise, especially in that space.
Right, Pedro, which one you are? I mean, there are hundreds of questions here, and I'm totally lost on the one you picked up. Go on, Pedro. Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. Well, let's follow. I mean, there are hundreds of questions. Let's follow.
I'm going to tell the audience that from tomorrow we're going to publish in the link I gave you here, which you could have it again for those who did not see. You've got it all written down here in the chat. You can see now. But tomorrow we're going to update it with more. Okay, because obviously it will be easier for you to identify questions and answers. Okay. Right, Pedro. This Marco has a question here from Homes and Legal. He's just saying increasing potential is good for everyone, right? He's just Marco from Home and Legals is just saying thank you for the webinar, because a lot of people interested to buy properties in Spain, and a lot of people interested to start working remotely. Some people, I guess, a lot of them will start renting a property, and you could have all the benefits. I mean, for those who wanted to come to Spain, and for those who qualify with a Nomad visa, I'll definitely and highly recommend you to go for it. For those who are not in this scenario, Pedro, they have the non-lucrative visa, the golden visa, the work visa, self-employed. There is a lot of them, a lot of opportunities, but this one is extremely benefit for them, and it's a good way of starting moving to Spain, isn't it, Pedro?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that one is a lot of benefit. Let's go through. I'm watching some questions right now. I mean, for Mario, should the financial requirement be in form of bank deposit, or it can be a monthly income? What it says, the law, it says you have to show financial means enough to live in Spain, to prevent that in case you don't have any income, you will be able to live in Spain. What it says, the law, it says 200% of the minimum salary in Spain, which is 1,050. So let's say it's 2,100 times 12 will be around 25,200 euros, at least minimum. And family members, exactly the same, but 75% of a minimum salary in Spain, which at the end it comes into 9,500 euros. What if I have a salary that is over that, but I don't have some savings? You will not fulfill the requirements. You have to show that you have enough money to live in Spain, that in case that you don't work, in case that you don't have the income that you are supposed to have, you will be able to live in Spain anyway.
But Pedro, if the contract is more than 25,000 euros, and you obviously don't have that much savings, it is your understanding that with that contract will be good enough to apply for the Nomad visa?
I have that with that. I mean, I don't think so. No.
So you don't.
I personally don't think, but because I understand that the requirement is you have to show that kind of that kind of money in order to have access to that, to prevent, and just to see the worst scenario will be in case that the following day that you come to Spain, you do not have any income because the company has bankrupt or whatever and do not pay you still have money to live in Spain.
So you think the interpretation of the law will be very square? Yeah,
I think so. Will be
because with the golden visa, they've been very square, but at the end of the day, they did progress on the interpretation, didn't they?
Yeah.
So the whole point of the law is to bring people working into Spain, giving them the benefit of having a low tax rate and having the benefit of having a visa, obviously for non-European citizens. So it is my understanding is to bring people in. But anyway, we'll see what is the criteria in Madrid, because as I said before, if you were to apply for a Nomad visa, I will definitely advise you to do it from Spain. So you have everything prepared, get it all ready with your lawyer, and then when you come here to Spain, you're ready to submission. Okay, because Heredia office, the foreign office here, immigration office, is much quicker than the consulate and is very specific. The consulate will just only send the information to the Heredia office, so the immigration office of the city where you're going to live. So it's creating more bureaucracy. Probably the taxes in that country, like the non-lucrative visa, the golden visa, the taxes you pay in the consulate, it will be higher than here, and definitely here the Heredia office are more used to it. And it's Madrid in this department, Pedro, isn't it? Is the one who really, so it's nothing to do with the consulate.
Let me read some other questions. We have not too much time. By Paul. Thank you, Paul. Currently work for a UK company as a contractor on an indefinite contract. Do you need to be an actual employee or working as a contractor sufficient to qualify? At the end, you need to show that at the end you have at least 3 years experience as a qualified experience. And if a company, you are employees, as I said, 3 months at least, or if not, at the end with professional companies, you work with them at least 3 months. Okay, does I suppose, this question is from Anna. Thank you, Anna. Does I suppose need to apply for the visa separately to be able to work remotely in Spain? No, you can apply at the same time with your principal, with your marriage, and also get the benefit of taxes if you wanted to. What about with regards to, we already have a bill and pay wealth tax already? Are you saying that I will have to pay tax on my income? Let me just read that from Anita. With regards to tax, we already have a villa and pay wealth tax already. I mean, it looks like it's non-resident and has a villa in this case, which is over individually 700,000 euros. Are you saying that I will have to pay tax of my income in the UK as well as paying 24% tax in Spain? Well, that's a question that is going to happen a lot. I mean, if people say, well, what if I move to Spain? I'm going to have to pay from my income in the UK and also in Spain 24%. Well, this is something that, as Michael said, that you said, Ignacio, it's going to be required, and also an advisor in your home country, a tax advisor, in order to conduct the double taxation treaty, in order to receive gross the income into your residency in Spain, because you will be resident in Spain. And then you will decide whether to get this benefit on taxes as non-resident on taxes, but residents really, or may get the normal scale as a tax resident in Spain. But obviously you will have tools in order to avoid double taxation. Obviously, you have to, and you will still be paying non-resident tax as a wealth tax, as in case that you have assets in Spain, in this case, which are over 700,000 euros individually. Okay.
Hey, we're running out of time, Pedro. I don't know if Michael wants to have another go with any question or any reflection.
I keep bringing up things that makes life more complicated. I'm just thinking, for example, I'm just wondering if somebody gets this Nomad visa, they come over to Spain, they buy themselves a nice house, they stay in it for 3 years, and then sell it to buy another property. If it's their main home and they're resident, they can roll over the profit into the next one. But are they residents for that purpose or non-resident for the purpose of of the allowance for a rollover of the capital gains tax? Again,
to be honest, they are resident with the benefit of the tax for non-resident. That's how I understood from Pedro and Guillermo.
Yeah.
They are treated like they are residents, but with a big allowance that I wish we could be in that place. Yeah?
Oh yes.
This is why it's important to plan that before you come, in order to say, well, imagine that maybe someone is thinking about moving to Spain, but maybe he's thinking about selling the property home country that he has, and maybe to reverse. Or maybe do not do anything, maybe just leave the property that is home country and rent it. And as a non-resident here, will be paying taxes over rental property there? No. Will be, in case that at the end, as a non-resident buys a property, and as you said, sell it after 3 years, will get the benefit of a permanent home. I would say, I understand is a habitual resident in Spain, but do not get the benefits of normal scale, because it's getting the benefit on the non-resident tax. It's important to check that. I like the question, Michael.
Yeah, yes, I think so, because obviously, I mean, also if they're over 65, they can claim an exemption without a rollover. Again, only if it's the main home. I think it's early days, and I think what we've explained today is as much can humanly be possible to explain today with certainty. So really, I think these other things, nobody really knows the answer at the moment 100%. So if someone is planning to make a big move, they need to consult with somebody like yourself, somebody like me, because there are lots of different variables. Let's hear all the variables in your particular situation and see if we know at that point all the answers to all the questions that we may do, because it could be that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, all these things are clarified and then we know all the answers.
And what is important also, Michael, and you are specialized on expert on that, is once you become resident, we normally, in case that you have assets, at the end, make a will. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Anyone with assets in Spain, regardless of being resident or non-resident, they must make a Spanish will.
once you become resident as Nomad visa, you are resident really in Spain.
Yeah, I mean, I better say anyone with assets should make a will, even if it's just a bank account. Everyone, they need to have a will. We all know what happens with estates in Spain when there's no Spanish will. They get more complicated, they get more expensive, and sometimes you can even be in a situation where you can't resolve it, and maybe the beneficiaries, people that receive the estate, are not going to be the ones that you wanted. So you need to make a will if you have assets, no doubt.
Okay, we're running out of time. I have another question, but I'm just going to open the question and probably answer it in the same webinar, Michael and Pedro, about 720. What happened with the 720 in this situation? Are they non-resident or resident?
Yeah, same thing, same problem. Are they resident or non-resident for declaring a 720?
Yeah, I think I have the answer, but I'm going to leave it for our next webinar, which will be the 720, as we always say, to keep it all nervous.
Yeah,
So,
I think for the purpose of the 720, they'll be considered non-resident, because we said before that for the purpose of wealth tax and assets, but it opens up there, as I say in Spain, it opens up the melon of all these questions, be it the resident, non-resident.
Right, Michael, we'll see and try to answer on the next webinar. Okay. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Ignacio.
Thank you to give your best knowledge out of this new law. And I'm going to pass over to Juan Fran, so these people can fly a little bit into the area, see whether they really want to work from this area of Spain, or whether they want to just keep it for a different day. Okay, so see you in 2 weeks' time, at the same time. Over to you, Juan Fran. And the microphone, Juan Fran.
Esos son en la página web de la gente que está en el para los miles, viene eso, la gente dice, solo tenemos estos dominios. Entonces, cualquier cosa,
Juan Fran.
arroba es uno de sus 10 dominios, no hay más.
Juan Fran. Juan Fran, no te oímos nada.
No se escucha nada.
No se escucha nada, Juan Fran. Se escucha a Michael que está...
Maybe because I was born on the Mediterranean, I feel so connected to this sea, to this land, to this light. Because the Costa Blanca is my passion, it's my life, it's who I am. It defines me as a person and sets me apart from the rest. Yes, it's important not to forget who we are and where we come from. That helps us understand the meaning of our lives. By this sea I was born and grew up, laughed and cried too, the emotions of life. Our land is health and well-being, the joy of living, in our own way, in our own style, authentic. That's why so many artists come to the Costa Blanca looking for inspiration, to capture the essence, that light that defines our character. And not just artists. So many people come here and stay. The sky, the landscape, the rosy sunsets, the warm sand under your feet, the sea breeze on your skin, the mountains, and seeing the sea from the heights. I love to close my eyes, take a deep breath, and feel the sun on my eyelids. As if the light was inside me. I can't explain it. As my grandmother used to say, life is full of inexplicable things. You have to live them, feel them. I had to live in other parts of the world to really value what we have here. I have everything I need. My future is here. I've learned to enjoy the little things, the little pleasures in life. And we know a lot about those. There's nothing more authentic than feeling happy in the place where you were born. And however hard I try, I can't explain it in words. Costa Blanca, authentically ours.